everyone. Welcome back to the CCO Follow podcast. We have a large podcast today, Travis.
Yeah, we do. It's crowded.
Jasper and Dara Dietz are joining us today. And if you've been watching the podcast for the past few episodes, you know we're talking about dating and engagement. And you also may have picked up, we haven't really mentioned engagement much at all, if any. I don't think we have really at all. And there's a reason behind that, and Travis will kind of explain a little bit, but the reason why we're excited to have Jasper and Dara on is because they recently got married. So their most recent 6-7 months have been in an engagement period. And then they just got married.
Yeah.
Maybe it's been longer. I don't know. It's probably been a lot longer.
Yeah, 96 days.
Wow.
Is that true? I don't know.
Yeah.
I should have looked it up beforehand. Like 4 months.
There you go. Yay.
So this is going to be kind of an exciting episode because we're going to find out, we have them on because we think they did engagement really well. Mm-hmm. And it's something to learn from, to glean from, but also to just hear your experience of what it was like going from dating to engagement and then leading into marriage. But Travis, explain really quickly before we start, why aren't we talking about engagement as much as we're talking about dating?
Well, usually dating is longer than engagement, for one. And although both are investigation phases, like you're not married, you're still in a sense single, but you're investigating to be married. Most people view engagement is like we're done investigating. Unfortunately, I mean, you should still be investigating. One of the things I appreciate about Gary Thomas's book In the Sacred Search is he's like, if you realize like the day before the wedding that this is not right, like you should back out. And that takes a ton of courage. That's not, you get a lot of response from people, but if you realize you made the wrong decision, God could tell you, like, you're not married yet.
Right. And that's what's important about engagement is you're not married yet.
Yeah. But all that to say, most people, when they reach engagement phase, at that point in their mind, they're like, I've already made my decision. Now I just have to make sure before we're married that A, we plan the wedding, and B, we are on the same page of how to make this work. And so a lot of people, they view it differently because one is an investigation and the other one is like, we're going to make this work no matter what, even though they're not technically married yet. So,
and there is like, it's a next step. Like it's more responsibility. It's totally more serious.
Yeah. You're starting to tell people, save this date. We're getting married. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really important. I'm glad that you said that. And with that in mind, let's just hear from you guys.
I just want to say real quick that I was just laughing just now because I was just remembering like years ago, I had this dream where I was like engaged to somebody that I did not want to be engaged to, and it was just not good. It was so bad. I just felt trapped. That was a terrible dream. I woke up, I was like, I wasn't even dating the person. Like it was just, it's crazy. It's wild. Anyways.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
That person was not Dara. He didn't even know Dara.
No, this was years ago. Yeah.
So that didn't happen. That was
good.
Yeah, but I just brought that up because you were talking about like, if you were engaged and you're like, you realize that it's really not
it's
good.
It's still better too.
Yeah. But like, I was just in that time feeling those feelings of like suffocation and trap, I've been waking up and being like, whoo, like that was crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us your story then. What, I guess you can quickly kind of synopsize. Is that even a word?
No,
I don't know.
Like
summarize, whatever.
Should be a word.
You met each other, you were friends, and then you started dating. And then how did that period of time lead to engagement? And then what was your engagement like?
Yeah, kind of a long story. Yeah. Because we met in SBSCC when we were both doing Running Start. I was 16, you were 15. We met in...
I was 16 going on 7. Sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah. We met what was my building that I was taking a psychology class in, lifespan psychology. And I just saw her and I was like, wow, that's a cute girl. And then I went and talked to her. Little did I know that she was having issues with guys talking to her. And so as soon as we started talking about it,
that's great.
Yeah, I know, terrible start. But it soon kind of like became good because we were friends. And even in that conversation, like she learned I was a Christian, found out she was a Christian. And so we kind of would talk. And then like if we saw each other, we'd talk. And then we were both going to the Christian club at that college. And so that was cool. But then that following summer, after we had met, we both went to Black Lake Bible Camp, and we served there together.
Did you guys know the other one was serving there, or you
Yes.
just found out when you got there?
Yeah.
Oh, you knew ahead of time.
I know.
This wasn't selfless serving. This was finding a way to see each other.
Yeah.
No, he actually did sign up first, and then I followed after I knew he was going.
Wait, you a free sweater.
Because I wanted to know someone there. I didn't really
Oh,
like.
okay. So it wasn't because it was him. It was because
Yeah,
someone you knew.
I was just like, I know someone there.
That's
I won't
fair.
be by myself.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's good. I didn't remember it going that way, so that's
There you
perfect.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I can see
Look
myself
at you
signing up
following
after her.
Jesus
I
and
know,
her
it was
just follow.
great.
Oh man.
Yeah. The vindication. Yeah. So we worked there, and we got to know each other a lot more. And then we ended up working there for like the next 4 or 5 years.
Like during the summers.
During the summers,
Yeah.
and we got to know each other a lot more over those years. Started coming to Calvary a lot more because you invited me to the high school at one point. And so me and a couple of friends went to the high school and got to meet the people here. And then later on, my church, because of COVID and all that, switched to evening services. And so I just started coming here in the morning. And also there was a Revelation Bible study that you invited me to because all the young adults here were doing it.
Yeah. Just all the kids were doing it.
They were, yeah. And it was my only source of interaction during like 20 to 21.
Yeah, that's
Which
true.
I
That
can't
was a tough
imagine you
time.
not having a source of interaction. That sounds.
I was drowning.
Yeah, if you can believe it, you guys,
Drowning in
Jasper
silence.
is actually drinking decaf coffee today.
Oh, I'm really
No, I'm
not.
just kidding.
I'm really not. This is like,
really not.
yeah, I already had 2 shots this is bad. Anyways, so we were in a Revelation Bible study together. And we just got to know each other. We didn't start dating until, was it 2023, right?
Ooh, let's transfer here. So, you guys are doing the Revelation Bible study. How'd you guys start dating?
It had nothing to do with the Revelation Bible study. I actually like.
Not founded on God's word.
I'd invited him to the harvest party at one point, or
Oh
for
no!
the high
Not
school.
founded on God's word and founded on
and
Halloween.
yeah, well, I
Travis.
wanted him to be able to meet people there because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to just like sabotage him into like meeting a bunch of people during like something that was not super social.
Yeah.
Where he'd have like a few minutes to meet people
Right.
and then the service would start.
Yeah.
I wanted him to have an opportunity to meet people
Yeah,
first.
totally.
So I invited him to the harvest party, and one of his other friends, or who was his roommate for a while, Ryan, and they both came and
Yeah.
met a ton of the people there. And then it was a lot of the people who met him there
Yeah.
were like, Dara, you should invite him to the Revelation Bible study
Gotcha.
too. And so then that led into, I think we invited both of them, Jasper and Ryan, to the Revelation Bible study. And then Jasper just kept coming consistently.
Yeah.
Right on.
And you guys hadn't started dating yet.
Yeah, how
No,
long?
not for another 2 years.
But-
Yeah.
The other 2 years, okay.
Was
Yeah.
it
Revelation
like,
is a long book.
Was it like Jasper liked you for a while and you were like, or was it like, what was that like? Like, did you like each other at that point?
Yeah, you're inviting to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, actually, when I first met her, I think this was mutual. I think we were both like low key interested in each other, but we both were like, this is not going to work out.
Why is
so yeah, just different,
Just 'cause you're young
different
and stuff?
personalities and different theological views.
Ooh.
Which that kind of weighed in a lot, actually.
Yeah. But she eventually won you over.
Apparently,
no longer Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, no. So that I actually didn't realize how much of a big deal that was until later we talked about it, and you're like, "Yeah, you were talking about these things," and I was like, "That's not okay," you know, like, yeah. And so, like later on, when of my own volition, I switched some of my theological views. I think that opened the door a lot more. And yeah, there was other stuff where I was kind of a little bit of a bad person, and it's just true. She was just like so family oriented, and I was like very much like individualistic, and
You American.
I know, and so I just like saw this person who was like super about other people, and
You're like, well, that looks terrible.
yeah. Honestly, if I can be totally transparent, I was like, nobody loves other people that much. And so I would just like kind of like looking sideways a little bit. And then I found out, I was like, oh no, I'm just a bad person. No, that was true. That gave me a lot of respect for her too, because just how much she loves other people and her family as well. And
So a couple of years, you guys were serving together at Black Lake. You're doing a Bible study. You were attending a Bible study together. All these different things. When and how did you start dating?
okay. Well,
You have permission.
that's
to
a bit
speak.
of a long, that's a bit of a long story as well. One of the harvest parties that we did, I believe it was it was 2021, right? It was a harvest party, and it was like October 20th or 31st, obviously, because it was the morning one that we were doing that year. And it was after that I went home and ended up calling her up on the phone, and I was like, hey, do you want to go on a date with me? Because I had been interested in her for a while, and I just felt like for myself, I was at a place where I was ready to start dating, and I was like, this girl's great. And so
You were 19 at this point? 18.
It probably would have been coming up on being 20.
Okay.
Would have been coming. So yeah, it would have been 19. Yeah. And so I was like, this girl's great. And so we ended up talking on the phone, and then, and you just weren't in a place to date at that time. But we got to know each other a lot more over the following, weeks and then months, for like 6 months. And then it just kind of was like, seeming like you weren't in a place to date. You weren't sure, if you were wanting to, like get into a relationship at this stage in your life. And so, I was like, all right, well, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to like push you into that or whatever. But we also over that period of time got to know each other a lot more. And I was kind of like more solidified in being like, this girl's great. And yeah, but then I ended up leaving for Bible college into California.
What was your perspective during this time?
For me, dating was intimidating. There was like, I held a lot of like authority behind dating, where I was like, if I start dating the person, then I want that to be the person that I marry.
Right.
Okay.
I had already
like
been
you want to be a date once person.
Yes. Well, I had
Okay.
already been in one relationship, so I really
You want to be a
wanted
date
to
two person. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I just really
Yeah.
didn't want to be like someone who was dating a lot of people, and then finally found the one that I was
Yeah.
going to marry. I wanted to be serious right off the start. But that put a lot of like tension behind
Totally.
dating anybody, because I had like the
Yeah, 'cause
idea
at
that
that
whoever
point-
I date next, I'm going to marry.
Yeah, essentially at that point, dating is essentially accepting a marriage proposal.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a really, that's
Yeah.
a big jump.
So I was really intimidated by the idea of dating, and wasn't really ready to do any of the actually like treading like the waters a little bit to see
Yeah.
if I could date this person.
Yeah.
I was like, if I start dating this person,
The
it's with the
investigation
intention.
side.
Yeah.
It's with the intention of marrying them.
Yeah.
And so it was over the course of time and getting to know him better that I was like, he's not asking me to marry him
Yeah.
if we're dating. And he
Yeah.
actually said that at one point. He's like, you know that agreeing to go on a date with me
Yeah.
is not us being engaged.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's honestly
seeing
good that
if
you
could
saw
marry.
Yeah.
saw that and
Yeah.
you said something. I mean, I think that's one of the important things about dating engagement is that it ought to be so often dating engagement is like this where everyone's trying to put their best foot forward, so no one ends up being 100% honest.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
it's going to be a true investigation, you need 100% honesty. And to be willing to like say that is important.
Yeah, and I honestly I find that we're so extreme as human beings. Like we go to the extremes of these things where, you know, it's like some people can treat dating kind of like how you were thinking, where it was like, oh well, if I'm dating this person, it's like I
We're
got to be
getting married.
committed.
Yeah.
And then on the
Like
flip
they're
side,
way too flippant.
on the other side, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
dating's just I'm having fun, we're doing all these things, and it's just I just love your talk that you gave, which is on our website now.
Now it's on the website.
It was so great because it's like, no, it's an investigation, and it's important, but investigate in healthy ways.
Yeah.
And so it's like taking those two extremes and pulling them back to like, this is what dating is meant to be. So
Yeah.
very cool that you guys
Yeah.
found that.
So you started dating, and what was the dating process like?
Well, kind of about what you guys were just talking about. I spent a lot of time thinking about like, man, what is the purpose of dating? Because I think a lot of the time, like just through movies or TV shows,
Totally.
you're like,
It's just to have fun.
if I'm not having a good time, then then this is bad.
Yeah.
Which is actually not really true.
Yeah,
Because
totally.
investigation can suck.
Yeah.
It can really suck. And so
Yeah.
you can just, or like even just learning somebody and learning that like, oh, this is how they love me in their own way, which is not how I receive love. And so I'm feeling
Yeah.
like this person's having certain intentions just because it's the way I'm reading their actions.
Yeah.
And so just that process.
There's a lot of clarifying and
so like if you just
re-clarifying.
are
Yeah.
basing how well it's going on
Emotionally and fun wise.
emotionally and fun wise,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
am I having a good time? Then that can be really, really rough because then it puts the whole thing in question. But yeah, so I typically like to like think about like the purpose of a thing
Yeah.
and then work my way backwards into my
do that thing.
action
Yeah.
in the day and the way that I'm going to think about it. And so what you guys are talking about as far as like the investigation period, because that's one of the things I was actually trying to figure out is like, what is like an ideal date look like? Like how do I take somebody out on a date, and like
Yeah.
what would that look like? And
Travis would say a walk.
Yeah.
Sure,
We
actually,
went on a lot of
walks
walks.
great.
Walks are great.
And they're great for a particular reason. Cardiovascular exercise that's low intensity. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No. They're really great because of what the purpose of dating is, which is
Yeah.
the investigation, getting to know the person, and which is one of the reasons I think that like a longer period, a minimum of like, I had a rule for myself of like a minimum of 6 months.
Yeah.
Minimum of 6 months of getting to know the person, because it's really easy to put your best foot forward for
Yeah.
a little bit. And then over time, maybe
Yeah.
you get to really see the real them, especially if you spend a lot of time together. But that investigation period is built there so that you can get to know them. Okay, so then what do you do on a date? You talk.
Yeah.
That's like number one thing. If
Yeah.
you are only doing activities that you're not talking with the person, then you're not going to be able to
Yeah.
get to know them as well.
Yeah. One caveat about that. So I think one of the reasons that movies are such a classic first date is because you don't have to worry about talking, but you get a shared experience. That's completely non-committal. It's just like, oh, okay, well, we watched a movie that didn't take anything from me. It didn't risk anything, but we got a shared experience now we can build off of. However, the classic, movie, then dinner, part of the problem with that is, you may talk during dinner, but you're like staring at each other's faces. And that's way more intimidating to like talk, especially someone you don't really know all that well yet. And that's why I like walking so much, or like driving and stuff like that, because it's way less, intimidating to just like talk to someone and be vulnerable and stuff like that, and actually get to know them when you're not like staring them straight in the face.
Yeah, and a mix of everything is not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
I think the very first date that I ever went on was like bowling. And it was just a difficult date because I was young and just
and you were
didn't know what I
bowling
was doing,
poorly,
and I
so
was
you got
like
really
feeling
angry.
awkward.
You were trying to win. That's where it was.
That's the real issue. And I was, and so it just was bad. No, I was kidding. Yeah, I think that sometimes when you're doing particular activities, like, if you're doing a competitive one, especially with bowling, like where one person stands up to go bowl, and then the other person's sitting, and then like you switch, and so like you're not really interacting with
it's
the
like,
other person.
okay,
It's
Just
like,
doing high fives in between each one.
yeah, kind of awkward, not gonna lie. But that's one of the things I realized with like movies is I was like, oh, but like you can talk before the movie, maybe talk during if you're an awful person, and
I'm
That
an
was a
awful
really,
person.
I was gonna say, man,
I
shots
definitely talk
fired.
during the movies as well when we go to the theaters, but I whisper. No, yeah, but then you talk after the movie, and then you can go on like a walk or something.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, like movies are actually kind of great because then you have something at
To
least
talk
to talk
about.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
The shared experience that you just had, how much you hated the movie because most of the movies in the movie theater suck. Anyways, but
So Dara, both of you were investigating at the same time. What were your what was the best date that you can like? I mean, obviously, sometimes it's hard choosing a favorite. But best date as far as investigation is concerned. So not most fun, but most like revealing as far as
I
like.
really learned about Jasper tonight.
I really learned about Jasper during this date, and then two, any other notes about during the dating phase investigation, like what kind of things helped in your investigation?
There were like quite a few dates. Jasper's always been really good at communicating, and I was kind of
Over communicating.
garbage at communicating. I stink at it. I didn't really know how to communicate well. So he would be asking questions, and it almost like came across as like antagonistic, where I was like, I am being attacked.
Yeah. He's investigating a little too hardcore.
Yeah, I was like,
I will know you.
but I always take a long time too to think about what I'm saying, and then sometimes he would say like, are you going to talk to me? And then I would lose all of my train of thought that I had already gained. And I was
so
Oh
close.
no. And then it would just be like, I start talking, and then more would come out eventually, and he'd ask like tag questions after that question that were smaller, because it would seem like a big question, and then he would break it down, which would make it a lot easier.
Okay.
But I remember there was one, it wasn't a date. It was like, it turned into like a conversation, and it was like after a church service, and he had been hanging out with I think he had actually gone over to your house for like just a couple minutes to hang out with the young adults, and I had gone over to the Capitol Field to run around the track. but he had
That
noticed
sounds
I was a
terrible.
little bit off during the
Oh.
service. And I think I had started to get, this is when we were dating, and I was starting to get nervous.
It was like 2 weeks
And
in.
it was like, it was not very far in.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm really bad at communicating with this person, and I don't feel like this person has like a good time when he's with me. And so I started getting like apprehensive, and then he ended up coming and joining me, and kind of just getting me to disclose like everything that I was feeling. And it was kind of like, we're like 2 weeks into dating. It's a little bit early to be like, we're not having a good time or we're not communicating well, because we're still learning how to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And that was just like a really healthy conversation where I realized that even though I was bad at communicating, he was able to get me to a spot where I could communicate better. And he was able to ask the questions that actually got me speaking. And it was just like more wholesome than I expected it to be. Like I expected that he might be like a little bit annoyed or frustrated that I was already feeling
I've been trying,
like,
and you're giving up already.
Yeah. And he was just really intentional while we were dating, not to be like kind of encroaching on any boundaries that he already knew I had. And he was just very sensitive. So I think like I was like, oh no, this guy is like being really intentional with me. And now I'm apprehensive. And I was just worried that the conversation wasn't going to go well.
Yeah.
And then it ended up going really well, and we ended up communicating effectively. And then from that point on, I just felt like more like I could be vulnerable with him, and he wasn't going to be upset with me about it. But also like there were times in our dating experience that our conversations did seem more tense. And he was good at being like, do you want to go on a walk or something?
Yeah.
And kind of like de-escalating the conversation and maybe like talking about something else for a little bit and coming back to that topic later.
Yeah.
Because once I started like getting like tense, it would be harder for me to talk about it effectively. So he's like, how about we take a break from that conversation and we'll come back to it when you feel more like settled.
Yeah.
And sometimes that would involve not talking about it that night either and talking about it at a later time. Which
sucks.
would be
hard.
so
That's
hard.
really hard.
Yeah.
Especially for Jasper, it was a lot harder than it was for me, because sometimes I needed that time to kind of process what I was thinking
needs zero
too.
time.
And
I'm like in my bed just trying to sleep and just thinking about it
Yeah.
all night long.
Yeah.
and he would be like, you want to like talk about it? I was like, I think I need some time to think about it. And
Yeah.
He's like, okay. But then
Yeah.
every time it was like, I knew in the back of his mind, he's like, oh, I wish we could talk about it now. But I was like not ready to talk about it. So later on, it became a lot more easy to talk about it in the moment. But when we first started dating, I was just so bad at communicating. And it was harder because I knew he would want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then it would put a lot more tension on me and make it harder to think about something.
Yeah,
Because I'm like,
ironically,
he wants
yeah.
me to talk about it now.
Yeah.
So it was
In
just
I know.
I think I can.
A cool thing you alluded to about like the investigation part is not just merely investigating by like asking questions like you were asking her questions, but also it's investigating of like you're seeing how he deals with your difficulty communicating, and when you open up in a way that's difficult for you, you see how he responds. Like there's also the investigation part that requires you to be vulnerable as a person, to see how they deal with your vulnerabilities and how they deal with the things that are specifically difficult or easy for you. It's just important to note that investigation sometimes it comes across like it's just facts you're learning about a person, but it's also how they interact with you and how they interact with others. That requires you at some point, and obviously it grows in stages. You're not just immediately vulnerable 100% the first date, but it's like, okay, a couple weeks in, I was vulnerable in this way. A couple more weeks in, it grows over time.
Well, relationships are risky.
Yeah.
Like that's just a part of life. Like even friendships, like when you're really trying to build a relationship, it requires taking risk.
Yeah.
And I so relate to Jasper, and I know my wife Molly would so relate to you, just because it's like for whatever reason, I think we're just verbal processors maybe, or just super I want to fix the problem now, or I want to get to the bottom of this. And
maybe it's just anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, like I don't feel peace until it's settled.
No, literally. So I definitely relate to that, and we've had our own kind of experiences with that. But I'm curious, as you guys are kind of going through this dating process. How long were you dating for?
Before we were engaged, it was 7 months.
Okay, so it hit your minimum of 6 months.
It might have been. Well, it was up into February, so that might have been close to 8.
My question.
So
7
8
or
months
8.
dating, and then 5 months engaged.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So that means 13 months, right? 13 total months, 8 plus 5, right? Okay, I'm not crazy. So 13 months. So just for
Yeah.
context of people, 13 months total.
Yeah. So like a year, about a year. When you were getting closer to that engagement, what was that like? Like, did you talk about it? Were you like kind of aware of it?
I had I had a roommate a while ago that got engaged with like his wife and whatever, and she had talked about how that like sometimes it can be difficult for the lady because like the guy
For the lady
because the guy
all you ladies out there,
because it can seem this way. I mean, like the girl should be processing this in her head as well, and they should be talking about it, but it can seem like the guy has like all this time to prepare himself, and he knows when he's gonna do it.
Yeah, totally.
And so he kind of settles it in his heart, and then knows the time that he's gonna do it.
Yeah.
Whereas the girl has to be like,
When is this gonna happen?
Yeah, and then like,
Yeah.
do I know what I'm gonna say? Like that type of thing. And so it can be just like a lot of pressure when it's
Totally.
finally popped.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, I was like, I need to warn her. She needs to know that it's gonna happen. And so, like I told you guys, that 6 months was a minimum for me. She knew that. I told her that. And then that 6 months mark, I told her, I was like, I'm gonna propose soon. And so I told her that. She didn't realize how soon it was gonna be.
Yeah.
wait, did you have? So he had a 6 month requirement. Did you have in your head any specific timeline?
I knew that was his like kind of benchmark, but we
Yeah.
had also said, he said earlier on in our relationship that he wasn't going to say I love you until he had like made up his mind that he would eventually marry me. And
then
that
he
was
said it in
around
week
like
2.
3 months.
Like 3 months in.
Yeah,
I
it was like the halfway
okay.
mark between like actually.
So did that
saying
just
he was gonna
greatly increase
marry me.
pressure
So,
then?
No, like yes and no. He was very good at communicating the whole time up to that. And I think nothing came as really like a surprise. It was like because he would warn me beforehand that he
It's
wasn't just
coming.
going to spring something on me.
Hey, by the way, tonight.
And he also said like when he said I love you first and was very good about saying like I don't expect you to say I love you back because I'm saying I love you. Like I want you to mean it when you say it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I said I love you back until like I think it was 2 days after he had said I
2
love you.
full days.
And where I
you
was
just
just
like
like-
dreading, just like wondering.
Well,
the
I
whole
knew
time.
his was like, I'm not going to say I love you until I know that I would marry you.
Yeah.
I was like, can I marry this guy? And if I say
Yeah.
I love you, then I'm going to be agreeing to the same terms as him.
You signed on the dotted line. Verbal
that
agreements just
that I'm looking into like, that I would be able to marry this person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was kind of investigating over the 2 days. I was like, can I marry this man that I'm dating now?
Yeah.
And over like the 2 days, I was like, yeah, I think I can.
Probably. You just find out.
Yeah, and I was like, but it wasn't like,
He loves me not.
but I had shifted my mindset that if I was dating someone, I didn't have to marry them. Like,
good.
someone else had come up and talked to me too, besides Jasper. Like
And said,
Jasper's
like,
like
"Please
saying
don't."
dating
Yeah.
me is not saying that you're going to marry me.
Yeah.
And then I talked to someone else, kind of just like for like advice on like, should I date him or shouldn't I? And she also said the same thing. Like dating is not agreeing to marry the person. It's
Yeah.
seeing if you could potentially marry that
Yeah.
person. She's like, it's testing the waters a little bit. And if you say yes, then you're also growing because you're learning. And you're eventually, if you want to be married, you're going to have to say yes to
Eventually.
someone.
Yeah, totally.
And she's like, so if you think that Jasper is someone that you could potentially be interested in marrying, if
Yeah.
you got to know him,
Yeah.
then I would say yes.
Yeah.
And if he's someone that you're like, there's no way I would ever marry this person,
Yeah.
then you can say no.
Yeah.
And so when I started dating him, it was with more of a like, I can eventually end this relationship if I feel like it's not going in the direction that
But
it
marriage
should be.
is potential.
Yeah.
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 And so then it was
Yeah.
when he, at the 6 months, was like, hey, I'm going to be proposing soon. I didn't realize it was like that soon. It was like 2 months
Yeah.
after that.
If
he
I
was
had
like,
the ring, I might have
proposed.
done it that month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like, do you
Right
mean
on.
in 5 minutes? Or do you
Yeah.
mean?
And it wasn't like intimidating whatsoever because I knew, like, since the point that he said I love you, that he was serious. And something that he had told me early on is that he doesn't say I love you to a ton of people.
Yeah, he's never said it to me. So
because it means it's like a big thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
You're
one
taking
day.
it seriously. It's honesty. Really, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I said I love you to a lot of people, like friends. If
Just
I was
flip
leaving,
it. Just
I was
everywhere.
like,
Anyone.
and like my family
and
members,
you
if I
and
ever
you.
ended a phone call with like my mom or my brothers or sisters, it was always like, I love you.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I mean it. And then he's like, but it's like a bigger kind
But I
of
mean
love
it.
when I say it. It's like,
Yeah. You just
not
have more
your-
room in your heart. It's okay.
It's true. She actually does.
Yeah.
She literally does.
It's okay, Grinch. Eventually, the heart will expand. It'll be
That's
great.
actually one of the benefits of being in a relationship with somebody who is so loving towards other people.
They
is-
cover it for you. You don't need to.
Exactly. I just have her do it for me, and
Yeah.
then my family feels
love
loved,
by
and
extension.
I'm like there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
no, just
present.
kidding. No, it's really good. It's very encouraging for me.
Yeah.
And like she started like even when she just was introduced to my family, and like just the way that she loves on like the nieces and nephews,
Yeah.
and then my sisters as well. I was just like, wow. She is already outpacing me. This is really no, it was so good.
Way
It's
to
really
show
encouraging.
off.
It's really encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as like communicating and stuff from the get go, because of the insecurities and like the fears about dating and whatnot that you had, that was one of the things that prompted us to do this. But we also were listening to some other people talk about this, and so we ended up doing this thing where once a week, we would have like a little meeting. And
With your binders and your
yes.
pencils.
Sometimes we got out the pen and pencil,
Sometimes.
and we're like, hey, let's talk about some stuff.
Can't chart.
No, but we would just go through like all the stuff, like all the major stuff of like, do you have any anxieties in the relationship like thus far? Like, is there anything on the back of your mind? Because like you go on dates with somebody and maybe you got something in the back of your mind cooking, and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't want to bring this up now because it's gonna ruin this date.
Yeah.
But you got to talk about that stuff at some
Yeah,
point.
you have
Eventually.
to.
Yeah.
And so once a week, we just made a deal that we're going to do that, where we talk about like insecurities, where we talk about like boundaries, like physical boundaries of like, hey, like, are we cool? Like, is stuff chill
Yeah.
the way that it is? Like, what are we
Yeah.
thinking? And because like we didn't like hold hands for like
3 weeks into our relationship,
Yeah,
where I was like, yeah, we can hold hands now.
yeah, and we didn't hug for like I don't know, like a month or something into it. It might have been longer than that. I don't know.
It was longer than that.
Yeah, it was a while. Which is fine, but yeah, we were just talking about that type of stuff because
Yeah.
I knew that she was just very, very cautious, and I also wanted to be like very cautious as well because yeah, like people like hold hands and whatnot, and I'm like that actually. Like that's not nothing. That's not nothing. Like it's yeah, I do actually think that there was a rule that I had for myself in regard to like physical stuff, other than like the obvious like Christian boundaries.
Yeah.
Like stuff like holding hands and stuff. My rule for myself always was to only allow myself to be as physical as I am committed to this person. And so like if I really was like, I don't know what this person, like I shouldn't be like being physical with them at that point, you know? And like being like all like close and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I just had other examples where that was the case. And I was like, that sucks that when people do that. Anyways.
I think it's important that you brought up like sometimes when we think about an investigation, we think about just like as a one-sided, like I have to do all this work to investigate. But it is important for you guys to come together and essentially like, yeah, you're going to come up with stuff on your own. But the more you can essentially investigate together by having, I mean, you guys had weekly meetings, whatever it ends up being for other people, you know, you do you. It's important to have these conversations in a way that it's like, okay, well, I did my investigating, you did your investigating. We have questions for each other now. Like it's actually like have like heart to heart, like real talk, because otherwise, one, your investigation might be flawed because you interpreted something wrongly.
Totally.
It might be flawed because you didn't see a complete picture. But also, even in the discussion about the things you're investigating, the things you're asking, you might find about stuff you would never have seen, never heard, and it's just really important.
Oh, this reminded me of this thing that happened when I was a kid, and that's why I responded negatively. And you're like, well, I would never have put those together
Yeah.
because I didn't have all the
Yeah.
information. Yeah. So you're just like,
Yeah. I don't know how good of an analogy this is, but it makes me think of like in our court system, generally have two attorneys, they're doing their own investigations, and they're essentially pleading before the judge that their case is right. Or in a lot of other countries, you have the judge essentially using the attorneys as essentially his bidding to do his investigation. And he's saying, this attorney, I want you to investigate this stuff. This attorney, I want you to investigate this stuff. And by doing that, you get both sides a little more clear, and you get a little I mean, there's still a lot of bias, they still want their side to win, but it's a little more like working as a team to uncover this thing together. And ultimately, I mean, the rest of your marriage, you guys are a team now. But even in dating, essentially, it's not you versus them. It's you guys together uncovering, are we a good fit to be married?
Right.
You know, that's okay. I talked to people about this. I talked to Dara about this too. That's one of the things that actually kind of irritates me about dating is like the contrast between the way things work in marriage versus dating and the mindset that you kind of almost have to have in dating because it's investigatory. I don't know, whatever.
Sure.
That because it's like that.
It can feel like you versus
You're
them.
saying I'm investigating into this person to find out if we are going to stay together or if we're not going to stay
Yes.
together.
Yeah.
That's not the mindset you have when you're married.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's just kind of weird. It's
Yes.
just it's a
Very
very weird period of time
Yeah.
where you're like, I'm practicing a mindset that I should not have after
Absolutely.
getting married. And so and that was one of the things that I really didn't like because it was like if a problem. Like I shouldn't be looking for things to call it off. I should be like, is this something that we can solve together?
Yeah. And most importantly,
yes.
is this something I can commit to knowing this is who I'm committing to?
Yeah.
Like, because in some ways, it's almost more self-investigation than the other person. You're basically investigating the other person to the extent that you're asking yourself, can I commit to this?
That's where I feel like, not to go on a deep tangent because we're running low on time, but I feel like for me, that whole, like when you guys are talking about like, well, I'm not going to say I love you until, I know I can marry this person. That was for Molly and I, for myself, like that investigation portion of our relationship when we were dating was heavily on me thinking to myself, like, am I even like capable of loving anyone? I was kind of in a similar way. Like, I don't know if you've ever felt that, but I was like, I don't like this person deserve, like, if I'm going to marry this person, like what kind of love I have to have, like, am I even going to be capable of this? Like, and so I was very like open with her about that. And someday I'll have her on and we'll talk about our story, but
Next week.
She was like very shocked that I was like, I just letting you know, I might not ever like love you. And that was like on like day 2 of us like
Day 2 of dating.
I might never love you.
And so,
Oh
but
my
that's what it
goodness.
was for me. It was like, am I like capable? Like, if I have to be honest with myself here, is this even
Little
gonna
less
be...
honesty, Arthur. Little less honesty.
And so I think it's really important that like in dating is like, that's your time, not only to investigate like, oh, what is this person like, but it's also, am I in a place where I can love this person in such a way that, I'm going to get married to this person and be with them forever. My question, as we kind of switch gears here a little bit. Okay, so you were dating, you got engaged. It's kind of like that first I would say just few months is very like, woo, I'm engaged. Like, this is exciting.
Yeah, showing off the ring left and right.
Yeah, it's like
decisions are being made.
Yeah, marriage is now rolling towards you. It's in front of you now. It's not just
progress.
like, I'm confused. Is it going to happen? I don't know if it's going to happen. Now it's like, yes, it's happening.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Tell us.
Don't sound too excited.
Tell us the difference between, what was that process like of engagement? Did you have engagement counseling? What was that like? Kind of, what's the differences?
We did have pre-marriage counseling, which was really helpful because you kind of said at the beginning, like, dating is kind of the investigation stage, but some of that can kind of peter out when you get engaged. Like, the communication can kind of stop a little bit because you've decided you're going to marry this
made a
person.
decision. Yeah.
So marriage counseling was really important for us because it did bring up some questions that maybe we hadn't talked about or maybe hadn't talked about in depth. Because we were both really good at communicating.
We talked about it a lot.
Jasper being great at communicating. So he would ask questions and I'd ask similar questions back to him.
Yeah, you answer it and you say, all right, what about you? Alicia did that a lot. It's like, I got my entire script written out. Just the thing he asked me, I was like, all right, your turn.
That's funny.
Yeah, someone sometimes would ask, do you have any questions for me? I was like, not anymore.
Not anymore.
But like, because he would have
And I
asked
bet that
them.
bugged you probably.
Yeah,
little bit.
I want to be
Yeah.
asked things so I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so marriage counseling was then helpful because we had more questions that maybe we had talked about already but hadn't gone into depth about. And it was helpful talking to someone else about it too, instead of it just being between he and I. Because then there was someone else to ask questions that maybe we hadn't asked.
Yeah.
And so during that period of time, though, we were able to kind of just get to know each other even better than we had already. And it kind of more solidified that we did want to get married because we aligned on a lot of the things that we were talking about. There was nothing that was like super big that I was like, oh no.
Yeah. Like, hold
I
up.
don't agree with him on this. There is like something later on. He had asked if I would eventually be up to moving if he wanted to pursue like education somewhere.
Yeah.
And I have always been like super attached to my family, especially since my sister had kids and I'm really attached to my nieces.
Yeah.
I wanted to like watch them grow up. And I was like, can I do that? Can I marry this man and go somewhere else?
Yeah.
If it means that I'm leaving my family. And so that was something that I had to investigate. And it was like really good confirmation that I did want to marry him when I was like, yeah, I would want to leave if he was going somewhere.
Yeah.
And it was really when before we started dating, when he had gone to college, that's when I knew that I wanted to date him. It was because he was gone for a period of time and I was
Stopped
like,
annoying her, and she's like, he's not so bad.
it just made me realize how attached I actually was to him when he left. I was like, oh, I actually really missed our friendship.
Yeah.
And having that person to talk to. So when he was like, would you be up to moving if I decided that I wanted to go somewhere?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I think I actually would.
Yeah.
Which surprised me because I knew how attached I was to my family.
Yeah.
So I knew I was committed to the relationship when I was willing to leave if he was leaving.
Totally.
And during the marriage counseling as well, that was more something that, with being able to talk to somebody else and seeing like kind of their relationship struggles and just kind of seeing not just from you, but
No,
like you
that's
would bring up other
Who
people.
did you get your counseling with?
We like to be very vulnerable to people we do marriage counseling with. They see plenty of problems.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was really good. Just and talking to other people who were either dating or getting married. Something Jasper would bring up all the time if we were having kind of tension in a conversation is he would like kind of pause for a second and be like, "I'm on your team." They were on the same
for
team.
each other.
Did he ever ask, like, because sometimes people can say that and you're like not in the mood for that. Has he ever been like, I'm on your team, and you're like, it doesn't feel like it?
No, he would always like kind of follow up with like, I feel like maybe you think I'm attacking you. And he's like, or maybe it feels like I'm attacking you. Do I need to like
What I hear
tone
you
it down what I'm saying? Which was really helpful because
Yeah.
sometimes I would feel kind of
Totally.
like, oh, I'm being attacked right now. And then
Yeah.
the kind of backing up and be like, I'm on your team. Like
Yeah.
I'm supporting you, was good to hear because then I would kind of get out of my own headspace where I was like,
Yeah.
oh no. And sometimes he would kind of have like a question, like whenever we were about to have kind of like a more like serious question, like or topic or conversation, he would come up and say, "Can I ask you a question?" And in my head, I was always like, "Oh no!" I was like, "Oh, it's going to be one of those talks." But then afterwards, it was always a lot better.
Yeah, literally every time
feel
we
so much
would
better
talk
afterwards.
and especially like because I don't like having tough conversations. They suck. I
Yeah.
just don't like not having tough conversations
Yeah.
because that sucks.
Even-
Worse,
Yep.
and that sucks in 30 years. So I was like, I need to deal with this now. That was my perspective on like a lot of stuff in our relationship. Is like I want to deal with everything that I possibly can right now
Yeah.
because I know that I do think that like bitterness is one of the main things that just freaking wrecks marriages and relationships.
Yeah, any relationship, yeah.
And I think that bitterness and contempt are born out of silence. You got something on the back burner in your head and you're
Yep.
not talking about it.
Yep.
And one of the things that can do is that you can feel very self-righteous. But one of the things that could be also true is that you could be very wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't know if you're wrong until you voice it.
Yeah.
And if you voice it in a way where you're like, I could be wrong about this, and then you find out that you are wrong about it, that's way better than having the self-righteous attitude. But after we would have those conversations, because like we would just feel, I think both of us had like the sense of the air of just kind of like, there's something that we need to talk about. And then afterwards it'd be like, I'm so happy that I'm with this person. That was actually probably one of the main things that that was like evidence for me that I was like, I can marry this person. And it was that we talked about everything. We talked about really difficult things to talk about, and we solved them, and we were able to bring them up and have conversations. And I was like, I don't have anything left to bring up. And in our marriage, if we come across a problem or if there's something in the back burner, we're going to bring it up and talk about it.
Yeah.
And so that was just a huge amount of peace for me. Because the whole anxiety thing of just being like, I don't like not dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
And just being like, great, we can solve it. We can solve problems together. That's a huge evidence for me that we can get married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Okay, so man, this could be like a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah, it could.
After dark, you know?
I guess what we're kind of coming to is that, I mean, the things that I'm taking away right now are, it's really important to treat dating in a healthy way, so that when that time comes where we're engaged, it's less, I guess, engagement is a little bit less of that investigation and a little bit more of like, okay, preparing to be married with this person. And I think that's why you mentioned, like, that's why for you it's like engagement should be very short. And I think a lot of people take engagement like, oh, now we're engaged, so it's like we're
Dating
pretty
phase
much
2.
married. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's pre-marriage, and it's like it's not that. It's
as short as necessary.
Yeah, and so I think that's really important for those who are maybe dating right now, who are thinking about getting engaged, getting married, or even for those in engagement already. What advice would you give them now that you've been through it all the way through?
Yep, I already know. This is something I actually talk about quite a bit. I really like the way that like Jordan Peterson said it. He talked about like the reason why we talk to other people, because some people don't process things in their head. They just kind of stew on things. And then they'll talk about stuff with their friends, and that's when they're actually processing it. And one of he calls that people outsource their insanity. I love that, because it's like I've done this with Travis before, where I'll come up to you, I'll tell you everything that's going on, and then I'll ask you the question: am I being stupid? Am I thinking wrong about this? And then and then maybe you'll tell me or not. You know?
Yeah.
But a lot of time you just give me like a perspective on things which was maybe more positive than I was thinking about it, or just different angles that I hadn't considered, and just helping me to process through it from an outside perspective. And so for me, probably the two biggest things that bring like peace and also just clarity in our relationship, and I think in relationships in general, is just us communicating to each other and being able to do that. And then also having somebody, at least one person, who's wise and respected, who knows everything, who knows all the stuff that
I was like, knows everything. God.
who knows all things. No. Who knows like what's going on in your relationship, who knows about like the good things in your guys' relationship, who knows about the things that you guys are struggling with and shortcomings and and arguments or insecurities, doubts. Somebody that you can share all of that with. And then because sometimes it's difficult to bring, like I was just talking with that about something about that with somebody this last week, of like sometimes you are wanting, or you got something on the back burner, but you're like, I don't want to bring this up with my girlfriend because maybe I'm being stupid and it's going to be hurtful, and I don't want to be stupid and hurtful. And so then you go and talk to your buddy about it, and you're like, hey, if I bring this up, am I just being dumb? Am I just being dumb? Because I don't want to hurt her if I'm just being dumb.
Yeah.
And so that can be really helpful because they'll maybe help you to frame it in a better way and to check your own motives and your thought processes. And so just having somebody in your life who knows everything that you can talk to and who loves you.
It should be mentioned that shouldn't be a family member.
That's fair.
I feel like that's like pretty like obvious, but then a lot of people that I had talked to would say like, oh, I talked to my mom or I talked to my sister. I was like, those people are biased. Those people are on your team.
Yeah.
So anything that you say, if it's at all negative about the person you're dating,
They're gonna latch onto
they're
that
going
and be
to
like,
latch
well, yeah, that's
onto
terrible.
that thing,
Yeah.
and they're going to be on your side, but they're not going to see the other person's side. So finding someone who's kind of like that even ground, who it's great if they also know the other person.
Yeah.
And they can say, yeah, you are kind of being silly. Because sometimes that thing is like,
I tell Travis that all the time.
Just being silly.
Yeah, I think it's funny. She's like, you're just being silly. I'm like, you're stupid.
Yeah. Differences, communication.
yeah, where I'm just like, oh, maybe not that person, because that person is always going to be, or more often than not, is going to be on your side.
Yeah.
And they're going to escalate the situation even more.
Totally.
So if you can find someone who's like that middle ground,
They
who
care
can
about you,
analyze
but they
both
don't
sides.
have
Yeah.
exceptional bias towards you.
Well, and that's another thing too, is like, it's not good to ask advice with anyone. Like, don't ask anyone and everyone for advice. Like what you were saying in your talk too is like so key. Like, there's a reason why Jasper doesn't ask me advice, and that's good. He shouldn't ask me advice on certain things.
We're just not that close, dude.
Yeah.
I'd
We're
love to
BDs.
ask you some advice.
But no, I mean, I just think like certain people, like like look at who you're gonna ask. Is that person gonna be like, unbiased? Is that person wise? Like, is that a wise person? Because if you just ask the random person, maybe that person is struggling with a certain thing, like you said, like it's not going to be the wisest decision to ask them for advice because they might not give good advice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so keep going. So advice for people getting engaged, and Travis, you can chime in on this too, because I'm sure you have good wisdom there as well. But
So much advice.
yeah,
My advice for like more geared towards girls is asking the bigger questions, because sometimes those can be intimidating, but they do need to be answered.
Yeah.
Is this someone that I find trustworthy? Is this someone that I can submit to is a big one.
Yeah.
Where if I would always like biblically been inclined to believe that the wife is supposed to be submissive in whatever her husband decides. In the case of like, if we were to move, I needed to be able to say that this is somebody that I trust is going to make wise decisions, and is not just looking out for his own needs, but is also looking out for mine. And just somebody that you can communicate well with. Whenever I had talked to other people who were dating around the same time as me, and they were having struggles in their relationship, and would be talking to me about like some of those things, I always felt like a little bit bad because they would be having trouble communicating, and Jasper and I had always been like kind of he's always just been good at it. So I'd always say like something too along the lines of like, find someone that you can argue with, or like not even fight with, but someone that you can
disagree with and come to resolution.
and debate with, and someone that you can problem solve with. Because those things can be like very tense and awkward. But if you can't do that with the person, then that is not a good relationship to be in.
It's also very real. Like the people who are like, oh, we've never had an argument. It's like, okay, so you've never had to see if you can actually resolve anything. Like, that's not a positive, because you will have an argument one day.
I definitely don't believe that anybody doesn't have an argument.
Yeah, and those things will eventually come up. Whether you're at the beginning of the relationship, it's really easy to look past all the things that are kind of like obnoxious or annoying. Although Jasper is actually really good at, even towards like the start of our relationship, being like, by the way, this thing annoys me, which would be like, and I'd be like, wow, it's a little early to be finding my things already.
I know, man. He was so good at pointing all
He's
my
a really good
flaws.
criticizer.
No, but those things were actually important. Like, I didn't want to be dating someone who wasn't going to. But I remember one thing in particular where I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me that you're that way, because we were just raised a lot more differently. And it was like, it had to do with watching movies, and he was always like super quiet during movies, and I'd be like talking during the movie, and he's like, I don't like when you talk during movies. And I was like, well, my family always does that. And he's like, well, my family doesn't do that. Like, it's like, it was like kind of like more like disrespectful to talk during movies. And in my family, we would be trying to figure out what the plot was during the whole movie,
As a
or find
communal
kind of like,
event.
I will
As
say
as
the
a group
guys in her
effort.
family also don't like it.
they also don't. But all the girls talk during the movie. And especially like watching shows where you had to kind of figure out, like if it was like a detective show,
like a whodunit.
you
Yeah.
were trying to figure out who the person was.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I
We're
bet
all
this
the same
person
team
did it.
here.
You know what's funny? So at first I was annoyed by this because she'd watch movies and she'd be like, "This is gonna happen," and it was going to happen. She didn't know, but she freaking would figure it out. And so at first I was kind of annoyed by it, because I was like, "Man, she just just watch it and just like find out and stuff." And then the amount of just like accuracy that she had, I was like,
You're like,
"This
you gotta
sim-
respect
she's a
it.
good
Th-
investigator.
Yes, yes. I was like, "This is really good."
That's awesome.
No, but just definitely like the communication is really key. If you can't communicate with a person, that relationship is not going to work out.
Yeah.
And not we had a conversation early on of like he said something along the lines that I didn't want to acknowledge the monster under the bed. He's like, I think you kind of like hide from your problems.
Yeah.
Can you say that in a Jordan Peterson accent?
Yeah.
But he would like say that all the time, where he's like, I think you know that there's a problem there. You just want to not look at that problem. And
Yeah.
if you avoid it for long enough, maybe it'll go away. But you secretly know that that thing is going to stay there until you acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And that's like something that I have to tell myself now, even in like times where like there is something on my mind, and he's kind of like,
still pry.
he can tell
Yeah.
that something is up.
Yeah.
And if he pries a little bit,
Yeah.
Or a
then I
lot.
have to, or a lot, then I have to be like, okay, I have to acknowledge the monster under the bed.
Yeah.
And so finding that person that will be able to like process things with you, and that you're willing to be vulnerable with, is
Yeah.
important. And someone that you trust, someone who's wise, someone that you, if you want to have kids, especially, that you think this is someone who's going to be a good dad.
Yeah.
Or someone that you think will have like a good family dynamic with your family,
Yeah.
and isn't going to kind of like, I see it in some relationships where it seems like there's just like a lot of tension once there's kids. And someone who's going to be able to like team build with you and support you as a parent too, like someone that you kind of like align with on your views of like, are we going to discipline in this way?
We
or
talked
are we
about that
not?
before we ever started
Yeah.
dating too. Yeah.
Which was good. It
Probably
was
because
like,
we worked at Black Lake Bible Camp together. but-
Yeah. You're like, stupid kids.
Are
I'm
you
never
gonna
parent like
discipline
this.
that kid?
yeah, so just someone that you can align with, because ultimately, if Jasper said like, we're not going to discipline our kids this way,
Yeah.
then I would hop on board on what he's saying. And so that's something that I would have to, even before we were like engaged
Yeah, you have to
or
come to
thinking
terms with.
about that,
Yeah.
like, okay, is this something that I can submit to? Like, that I'm fine with not doing this with my kids, or with doing this with my kids.
Yeah.
And just someone that I'm going to feel like supported by,
Yeah.
and someone who's taking in my views as well, because it's really easy to kind of feel like if you're the one who's being submissive, that you're kind of being bulldozed.
Yeah.
Like someone's not taking your perspective into consideration.
Yeah.
And that if you feel like that situation wasn't handled well, that you can't say something because you have to submit to that. Where that's
Yeah.
not the case,
Yeah.
you can come to the person, and if they respect you, they're going to listen to your view, and maybe communicate their view as well. Like, okay, this is the way I viewed it.
Yeah, this is why I did it this way, or why I want to do this
why
way.
it was
Yeah.
done this way, and the reason for my method.
Mm-hmm.
And then being able to analyze like whose method is maybe a better way of looking at it. And it's not always just going to be you submitting like compromise.
It's not black and
is
white.
key.
Yeah.
And that was just something that I realized early on in our relationship, is that he did value my views and my perspective. And he wasn't just kind of overlooking things. There were a lot of times where we'd talk and I was like, actually, I think I was wrong in this case.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you were the one who kind of like took hold of that situation.
Yeah.
But then there's been other times where he kind of like leaned more my way afterwards, especially when it comes to other people.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Like most of the time, if it comes to like other people and kind of like just like
hospitable
being more
or-
hospitable,
Yeah,
it's
loving,
like, hey, I
you
don't
know.
think
A
that
good
was
person.
like a good,
Yeah.
Where it's like if I come up and I'm like, hey, I think we should do this,
Yeah.
or I should have done this way, he can he tends to lean more in my way of thinking. So
Yeah. He's like, well, give me
balance
the
each other
evidence of
out.
why that was important.
Yeah.
Well, look at Jesus. Fine.
You got me.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's just really
Yeah.
good being able to communicate with someone and have someone who is on your team.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Man, thank you guys. Sorry, Travis. Thank you guys for coming on. Travis, thanks for also being
Being
here.
present.
Yeah.
Yeah. Present.
Thank you so much for watching and listening. I know this was kind of a long one, but
a good one.
we could have gone
So
for
long.
so
much
much
longer.
longer.
There's a
Yeah.
lot.
Dara's a really big talker.
Yeah.
You know.
much.
Yeah. No, it's really good. And the stuff that you guys, again, it's very relatable. I can relate a lot to you guys, and I'm sure many of you can as well.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for telling us your story and
course.
talking about dating and engagement. As always, you are welcome to ask questions. If you have personal questions for them, maybe not ask those, or you could just ask them.
I mean,
don't
ask
know.
those, and we'll
Yeah.
maybe ask them ahead of time.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll
like
see.
Jasper,
I like
how do you
saying no.
style your hair?
If I don't want to answer, I'll just say no.
But yes, if you have questions that you're thinking about, or you know someone might have a question, send them in to us.
Yeah.
CalvaryOli.com/follow podcast.
Or on the social media where it's posted.
Yeah, or on Spotify, YouTube, in the comments, whatever it is. We're going to answer those questions at the end of the month, which is in one more week.
Yeah, something like that. Yes,
Maybe two more?
next week.
Yeah. All right.
Next week when you hear this.
That's where it is. Thanks again for watching and listening and joining with us as we try to follow Christ. As always, God bless.